A political earthquake has jolted China's military. President Xi Jinping has removed his most powerful general, his closest confidant, in the most dramatic purge yet of the People's Liberation Army. China's military establishment has been rocked by a stunning purge at the very top. The Defense Ministry announced that General Zhang Youxia, the PLA's highest-ranking uniformed officer and vice chairman of the powerful Central Military Commission, has been abruptly ousted over what authorities describe as grave violations of discipline and the law. At 75, Zhang was not just a veteran power broker, but one of President Xi Jinping's most trusted allies, making his sudden downfall all the more explosive. The shockwaves didn't stop there. In a parallel blow, the military confirmed that General Liu Zhenli, chief of the PLA's Joint Staff Department, is also under investigation, deepening fears of a sweeping crackdown within China's top brass. Zhang's removal marks a watershed moment in Xi's sweeping dismantling of China's military leadership. With this move, all 6 commanders appointed by Xi to the Central Military Commission in 2022 are now gone. The powerful body that controls China's armed forces has been hollowed out, left with just one member besides Xi himself, Zhang Shengmin, the official in charge of overseeing Xi's military purges. The shock is amplified by Zhang Youxia's personal bond with Xi Jinping. Their ties go back generations. Their fathers fought together in Mao Zedong's army. Xi had even kept Zhang in his post beyond the customary retirement age, a rare signal of extraordinary trust. That trust has now evaporated. The purges are being framed as part of Xi's relentless campaign against corruption and disloyalty inside the Communist Party. But the removal of his closest military ally has stunned observers, suggesting no one is beyond suspicion. This is not the first wave. China's largest military purge before this came in October last year, when 9 top generals were expelled from the party. Among them, 3 three-star generals and several senior figures at the very heart of military power. Most notably, the purge removed He Weidong, then vice chairman of the Central Military Commission and the military's second highest-ranking officer after Xi. He became the first serving Politburo member ever to be investigated. He was last seen in public in March, his disappearance fueling months of speculation. At the time, the Defense Ministry said the officers had seriously violated party discipline and were suspected of massive duty-related crimes involving enormous sums of money. They now face military prosecution. The purges didn't stop there. In November 2025, the Communist Party removed 20 senior officials from key posts in a separate crackdown. The target this time, officials whose families live abroad. While they retained party membership, they were stripped of power, as Beijing moved to reduce exposure to sanctions, foreign pressure, or intelligence coercion. With Zhang Youxia removed, Xi Jinping stands increasingly alone, but more dominant than ever at the apex of China's military command. What began as a sweeping purge to enforce absolute loyalty is now redrawing the balance of power inside the world's largest armed force, tightening Xi's grip while sending a chilling message through the PLA's highest ranks.
US President Donald Trump has lashed out at Canada over its rejection of his proposed Golden Dome missile defense project over Greenland, warning that China could eat them up within a year as Ottawa moves closer to Beijing. Posting on Truth Social, Trump said Canada opposed the Golden Dome despite it offering protection to Canadian territory. He claimed Canada instead voted to do business with China, which he warned would eat them up within the first year. He wrote, and I quote, "Canada is against the Golden Dome being built over Greenland, even though the Golden Dome would protect Canada. Instead, they voted in favor of doing business with China. Trump's comments come amid rising tensions with Ottawa following remarks by Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Trump said the Golden Dome missile defense system would also protect Canada. Carney, in his WEF address, warned of an era of great power rivalry and opposed tariff coercion. Days earlier, on January 17th, he announced a new trade agreement with China, calling it a boost for Canadian workers and businesses. Canada has agreed to cut its 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles and an annual cap starting at 49,000 vehicles, rising to about 70,000 over 5 years. China will reduce tariffs on Canadian canola seeds from 84% to about 15%. Carney said China has become a more predictable partner than the United States. Canada currently faces a 35% levy on its goods, along with a 50% levy on imported metals and 25% on non-US automobiles. Meanwhile, US-China tariff threats eased after a Trump-Xi meeting, with exemptions on some Chinese products until November 10, 2026. The war of words now underscores deepening trade and security rifts between Washington and Ottawa.
The global system has been turned upside down. Canada must forge a new path by navigating the world as it is, not as we would like it to be. We are charting this course with confidence, pragmatism, and ambition. There are disruptive superpowers in the world, more than one, and that's the way the world is. That's the truth. That's reality. And Canada needs to have relationships with major powers, trade relationships, but relationships that are tailored to our interests and values. In the gilded halls of Beijing's Great Hall of the People, a quiet geopolitical shift has taken shape. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney stood beside Chinese President Xi Jinping and, with a few carefully chosen words, signaled a reset that could redraw old lines of loyalty, trade, and power. Carney called it a new strategic partnership. Beijing calls it an opening.
Canada can thrive in a new system, but to do so, we must be ambitious. We must work at speed and scale to find new partners, to diversify our trade and attract unprecedented levels of investment in our country. And we must be pragmatic. That means we have to understand the differences between Canada and other countries, and then focus our efforts to work together where we're aligned. And it's with this approach that Canada is forging a new strategic partnership with China. President Xi and I are announcing that Canada and China are forging a new strategic partnership. It will focus on 5 key areas where both our nations stand to make substantial and sustained gains. The first is in clean energy and climate competitiveness, areas where Canada and China have immense strengths and complementary strengths. Second, we're expanding trade, particularly in agriculture and food, where Canada is a reliable partner. Third, our commitment to multilateralism and strengthening global governance comes at a time when all of this is in flux. Fourth, we're deepening engagement in public safety and security to protect our peoples. And finally, people-to-people ties and culture are being enhanced to enrich our lives.
After years of frozen relations, arrests, retaliation, and mistrust, Canada and China are stepping back toward each other, not out of nostalgia, but necessity. This is the first visit by a Canadian Prime Minister since 2017, before relations collapsed over the arrest of a Huawei executive at Washington's request and the jailing of 2 Canadians in China soon after. But today, the world is different. The United States, once Canada's unshakable anchor, has become unpredictable. Sweeping tariffs, trade threats, and Donald Trump's repeated jaw-dropping suggestion that Canada could become the 51st U.S. state. Ottawa has heard this message over and over again. In Beijing, Carney spoke of repairing an international system, of historic gains in agriculture and energy, of cooperation in a world under pressure. Behind the diplomatic language lies a hard economic reality. Canada will ease restrictions on Chinese electric vehicles, allowing nearly 50,000 EVs into its market. In return, China is expected to slash crushing tariffs on Canadian canola, a crop worth $4 billion and vital to farmers who've watched their second-largest market vanish overnight. Lobsters, peas, agricultural lifelines